Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. When you have children, one thing you find yourself doing, usually at night, is reading them a bedtime story. From Dr. Seuss to the Narnia books and everything in between, they will pop up. Now, after a while, this ritual can start to get a little monotonous, especially if you're reading the same things over and over and over to the point where you're like, oh my god, I'm tired of these books. And sometimes the thought might creep in your head, you know what? I could write a better book than this, or maybe bring something new into the rotation. Maybe I'll write them something. More than likely, it'll be the latter one, but if the former one comes into your head, this is the episode for you. This is the children's book. This episode deals with Debra just getting so tired of having to read the same three books to the kids. One of them being The Cat in the Hat, which there's nothing wrong with that book, but after several years of reading it every night along with two other books, I could see why Debra's frustrated, especially when it seems that Ray rarely goes up, and when he does, it's usually, out came the sun and dried up all the rain, as the previous episode shows. So here she's very frustrated, especially when she comes downstairs. Ray was supposed to do something very simple like clean the dishes, and instead Marie's in there doing them. Which, I've said a couple times that Ray is a man-child at times. This opening part of the episode is the epitome of him being a man-child. Mommy coming in and doing the chores for him. Ray, Ray, Ray. Well, after getting her mild annoyance out at Ray's antics, she talks to them about wanting to write a children's book. At first, Ray doesn't want to help her, which, given that he is a writer, and he spends his work time writing, and if he doesn't want to write in his free time, it's something he'll want to do, you can understand why he doesn't want to go in there and help her write. It's like, I do this all the time, I don't want to do it in my spare time. Which I can tell you I understand. I mean, I write both for work, do reports, and of course do writing on the channel. I mean, this right here is a stream of consciousness, essentially, with the thoughts going through my head, but it still is difficult to do that. Then also to do the video essay ones, where you gotta sit there, write out every thought, make sure you got every thought you want to put down before you start recording, and then if you think of one way you're recording, stop, add that into it, and keep going and editing and all that. So I understand Ray's frustration when it comes to not wanting to do stuff like that in your free time. You just want to relax. And then here comes Debra wanting to do it, which, okay, if she wants to do writing, she could do writing. And then Frank and Marie coming in and trying to ruin it. Robert jumping in on the bandwagon to do it. So Ray, you could definitely see that he feels like he's forced to jump into it, but he agrees. And then they start doing it, and the rest of the episode deals with these two working on the project. Working together, working separately, working against one another, and then showing the resulting storybook to Allie to see which one they like better. And that is where a lot of the comedy comes from. Both from the beginning of the writing progress, where Ray has to do some stuff that is very ritualistic, play a little Galactic Defender, squeeze something a bunch of times, which I guess is analogous into getting into character. But it's for writing, it's getting into the zone, which I can tell you, in order to write, you got to really be in the zone. Sometimes you're already in the zone, you sit down, and you're just typing there like, oh really, that came out easily. Whereas other times, you got to really focus and get into it. And as you're sitting there, you're like, this is bad writing. It's like that scene out of Secret Window. It's like, just bad writing. So when Debra complains about that part, I'm on Ray's side. It's like, you just can't jump onto the writing. I mean, sometimes you can, but some people got to get into the zone, and Ray's one of those writers. And then going through the ideas, this, I think, is kind of analogous to how the writing room, especially for a sitcom show like this, is, where they're throwing out ideas. Some people hate ideas, some people don't like them. And it makes me think of John Cleese's Monty Python story involving the writing of the episode, where there's a goat or a sheep that's supposed to be the chandelier, and they keep going back and forth on which one is funnier, and then they goes off into a big old argument. That's essentially what happens here. They're discussing their ideas, and then it goes into an argument, and they go their separate ways. I can imagine the writing room for the show might have been like a less chaotic version of that, and then they just channeled that into here, and like, this would be funny. Nice little metaphor to throw into the sitcom. Well, when Debra goes off on her own, she finds out just how hard it is to write. It is very, very hard. You can see she's really getting frustrated, even though she did PR work before, but that's a different type of writing. That is more public relations, report writing, little memo writing, whereas this is story writing. You're writing a narrative, and you're aiming it at children, so you got to really tone down how you're writing it to fit the grade level you're aiming for. And she's having difficulty with it, so Ray takes it, he works on it. It comes out good, but then Debra still has issues with it, which leads to the contest in the end, which is a nice little funny moment. And it makes you wish that you actually got to hear the whole story. I mean, we got the vague idea since it is based on something that Allie did when she was younger, where she wanted to run away from home. She was packing, and they were talking about all the items she was putting in there. By the end of it, she didn't want to leave because of all the good memories and had forgotten she wanted to run away from home in the first place. But it would have been interesting to see how Ray wrote it versus how Debra wrote it. The closest we get is when Ray brings up that Debra's is rhyming. The bunny hopped here, the bunny hopped there. And then the last few sentences of Ray's version about Winky not even leaving. Which that's what Ray names his. Whereas Debra goes with Clive. I have to say I have to agree with Debra on this. Clive is a better name, even though it is very highbrow. And of course, when Ray first hears it, he goes with the obvious joke. Hello, I'm Clive. I'm happy to be alive. This is another episode that was written by Steve Skrovan, who is one of the writers that repeatedly shows up on the show that captures the essence of the characters and the family dynamic and can derive excellent humor from it. I know I'm just going to get a little repetitive when I keep bringing them up, but I got to mention these writers when they pop up like this. This is probably not one of my favorite episodes he's written. I think the next few episodes he does this season are better. And I will admit, this is an episode I sometimes skip. I mean, for this, obviously, I'm not skipping it. When I do my marathon watches, it depends on my mood. Like, if I'm not in the mood for it, like, skipping. But, like, 8 times out of 10, I'll watch it. Not like a certain episode in Season 3 involving the Parkers. I usually always skip that episode. Unless I'm in a very specific mood and all the planets are aligned and all that. Frank and Marie only show up in a couple scenes, so this episode is really Ray and Debra centric, which is fitting considering it's about them writing. The only time you bring the other characters in is to set up the scene and then the epilogue joke, which is derived from Frank apparently being a painter when he was younger, which isn't the first time anything like that is mentioned. From some of the dialogue mentioned before, it seems like he really didn't like the arts. I mean, he didn't want Ray to be taught piano, but I guess there's a difference between going through the piano and then in your spare time painting. But I guess it shows with Frank and Marie combined, Ray did inherit some art talent. It's just instead of a physical medium like art, it's more a word medium. And of course, when we see the painting that Frank painted, which is pretty good, it's like, wow, he really could do the art for the book. And then, of course, he shows off one he painted of his mother, which is another thing we find out, that despite their slightly conservative fronts, Marie did pose nude for Frank when they were younger. Which you can actually see the painting on the blooper reel. It's a nude with a Photoshop of Doris Roberts' face. I just love it. Peter Boyle with it, he's like posing with the photo for the audience. Is like, in Europe they appreciate the nude. Nice little joke. It's definitely one of those little bits that, okay, works in front of the audience and is for a blooper reel, but probably not for the episode. It's like that cannoli up Ray's gag from season 1 that was a missay. Not really going to get past the censors. The only way I could have seen them doing it is if they went the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air route and had bloopers over the end credits. The only other thing left to mention about the episode is that in the end, Ray does end up winning the contest from Allie. However, he lies to Debra about it, but she was listening against the door, which is so something Debra would do. But then, near the end of the little argument about you should have let me lose with dignity, you didn't have to lie, cover for me, I was just trying to be thoughtful. That whole back and forth that we've seen a handful of times and we'll see again in the future from these two. Debra just disregards the fact that she lost, stating that it probably was because of Allie hearing that story second, plus the fact that Ray was really selling it, which definitely sounds like something Ray would do, but based on the last few lines, it looked like he was just reading it normal. So it's probably just Debra heckling and making fun of her husband like she normally does, including the little bunny hop up the stairs. Winky doesn't hop like a drunk, as Ray tries to retort. And then that leads into the Frank portrait scene. All in all, pretty fun episode. Wouldn't make my favorite list, but it's a nice little Ray Debra centric episode that carries over from the previous couple episodes and has the same director too, so nice little shot continuity there. Now after this we get one of my favorite episodes of season 2, The Gift, which centers around Frank's birthday, Ray not getting him a gift and then being forced to get him one when everyone else does, and the hilarity that ensues and more jealousy from Robert.